Greetings. I'm Brother Judah, a member of the Congregation of Israel, and also a member and representative of the NMP, the Nazarene Messianic Party. And I am coming to you tonight to deal with a discussion concerning a question that was asked in the context of this debate, or should I say, exchange that's been going on for some time now, year or so, concerning veganism. And it was a question asked, and we would like to address that question. We are the NMP, the Nazarene Messianic Party, and with the Biblical School of Global Liberation for All Oppressed People. We approach the Bible from a social political perspective. And we argue that is the proper way to approach the Bible from a social political perspective, because it deals with people, nations, kings, servants. You know, it deals with society, the science of society. Now, know that I'm rather late to this discussion that have been going on. I'm learned just recently on YouTube from a discussion that I had, or we had, with another individual concerning a book or books, the Gospel of the Nazarenes, so-called Gospel of the Nazarenes, the so-called Gospel of the Holy 12, and the Essene Gospel of Peace, I believe. Now, again, I heard this argument some years back, but I am rather out of the loop, if you will, in the so-called Israelite communities. So this information came across to us with an individual who would study with us, and then we addressed it. And then from there, I found out that, hey, this is a topic. We also have other members that had mentioned it as well, who go in on Clubhouse, and they've seen various arguments on Clubhouse and Facebook. But I myself never really seen it too much. So just recently, within the last week or so, I started to look at some of the arguments being presented. And it is concerning a couple of guys that I am aware of for some years now, at least one in particular. The other one, I never really heard him speak too much, just, briefly. But apparently that they are going into this realm of the Gospel of the Holy 12, and they have been asking questions about these Gospel of the Nazarenes and the Gospel of the Holy 12. Actually, they're one and the same, really. Before it was called the Gospel of the Holy 12, it was called the Gospel of the Nazarenes. The Gospel of the Nazarenes, from my understanding, is just it's a little bit more extensive. But nevertheless, I'm going to say this, is that this is an example of the clash of religions and the clash of religious dogma. So it appears that these fellas out of St. Louis, if I'm not mistaken, it appears that they really, whether they acknowledge it or not, and whether I'm right or wrong, it's like that they had reached the brim of religious idealism. And now they want answers, because they're looking at this consumption of flesh and this correlation with the consumption of flesh and ailments. And so we have a rather long title, and it's entitled, "If Meat Kills, why does the Bible say we can eat it? And this was, it's probably paraphrasing, but this was one of the questions that he asked, and I'm going to play some of his video. And so my rebuttal in the beginning is the, is the Bible corrupt, or is the question, or is it the wrong question? But it appears this individual we're going to play here, he's going to pretty much be, he don't really want to hear any religious idealism. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, I've heard him say, make sense of this. If your God, the God of Israel, is the God of the living, why would he prescribe a diet that causes death? And so these are the answers. And so to be fair, just even the rebuttals to his arguments, other so-called Israelites making rebuttals, it was rather frustrating because he had already made it clear that he read the Bible. Even the Egyptologists, he said he's familiar with the hieroglyphs. Don't bring him no scriptures. Don't do that. He's familiar with them. He said he taught them for almost 9 or 10 years. And I believe I understand his sentiment. Give me some science. He said, make sense of this. So the rebuttal is how off he is and all this other stuff, but that still don't answer his question. Part of the rebuttal, they read in scriptures, that's the reply. Here, get me this scripture. Hey, that's easy. Go ahead and read Exodus chapter 12, or get me Ecclesiasticus this, or read this. Look, he's not asking for that. He's not asking for no religious idealism. That's not what he's asking for. He's asking you to make sense of it. And the replies of these so-called Israelites is rather, they laughing. Even I guess this picture is a mockery, but they better be careful because some of his questions have some validity. Okay. So there's something going on in the communities. That's no doubt. And so we here at the Nazarene Messianic Party, we want to approach and answer his question. Whether he accepted it or not is something different, but we're going to take the approach, as we say, using a dialectical materialist method and also the historical dialectical materialist method. In other words, we're going to look at the environment and see what this environment, study the environment in detail to see what is it that's causing the issue. So it could be misleading if you just say it's meat. It could be misleading. It's the same. We generalize things to such an extent that we don't just do it with in this particular subject. We do it with many other things. Something crazy going on, we ready to blame a race. We ready to blame a family, instead of analyzing and studying the society as a whole and analyzing the contradictions, and then coming to the conclusion, ascertaining the facts. So we study the scriptures. And so therefore, in our study of the scriptures, we argue that we want to approach it from the historical, dialectical, materialist method. In other words, it's not just spirit, it's spirit and body. It's not just the unseen, it's the seen. They all work together to create one picture. So if we want to understand the contradictions of what's going on in society, we must study the society. So it's not all about just, here, read this verse, or get me such and such and just read this. That's not what he's asking. So I'm going to play a little bit of I'm going to play his clip. And so we're going to attempt to answer this, this argument. And what I have before you behind the screens, picture is worth 1,000 words. And these are the contradictions. And we're looking at behind the scenes before the flesh comes to the table. This is what we see. We see polluted waters from the waste, from the CAFOs, from the concentrated animal food lot operations. This is what we have here also to my left. And then we have the concentrated food lot operations, concentrated animal food lot operations to my right. And here we see the polluted ponds and stuff like that from the waste. Now, we want to get down to the bottom of it. We're going to take our time with it. So we're going to examine a couple of things. Probably not all today, but we're going to attempt to deal with it. And two, while I was looking at these, primarily the rebuttal videos, I haven't really went on their page and looked at their official videos, but they've been playing enough of the replay and commenting that I'm sort of see where I want to sort of address. But another thing was said about Isaiah 11. And this was told to us when we was discussing with another guy who studied with us. He talked about Isaiah 11 in the future kingdom. And we haven't addressed Isaiah 11 to the public, but we do have a teaching on Isaiah 11 verses 6 through 8. And I was trying to figure out when I want to release it. And so I'll figure, well, you know what? We'll probably release it after today, after we do these. So if anyone have any questions on Isaiah 11 and the lion eating straw like the ox and the wolf and the lamb lying down together, we have a teaching on it. And we attempt to put that teaching in its context. And our argument is that text, it really isn't talking about a Edenic vegan diet for animals nor humans. And the parallel passage, the parallel passage is in Isaiah 65, which some, if you take into consideration the clues of imagery and hyperbole, is found with the snake in the parallel passage where it says the snake shall eat dust. It didn't say the snake gonna eat straw, it didn't say gonna eat herbs or anything. It actually said the snake will eat dust. So there is symbolisms with the lion eating straw and resting with domesticated animals, and the snake eating dust, not vegetation, but eating dust and not harming children. Now we're going to look into that, but that's the separate teaching. And God willing, we're going to release that for those of you who are interested. God willing, we will put that up so you can check out that teaching. But let's look into this to see what this individual is explaining about the community. And I hope my sound come out pretty good. And it's not. Hold on one second. Okay, I'm going to have to make some changes. Bear with me one moment. One moment.
Somebody's lying.
Can you all still hear me?
Simple question.
I had to make some adjustments. Can you still hear me? Anybody who's with us?
Yeah, I can hear you, Elder. I just heard the video as well. I'm not sure if you paused it. I can't hear the video now. I see it going.
Yeah, I stopped it. So I had to do some adjustments with my sound now. So I'm learning what I have going on here and what I can do simultaneously and what I can't. So
gotcha.
With that being said, we're going to play the video. And as some of you probably have heard already, his argument is that someone is lying. So let's listen to what he's arguing here so we can begin to attempt to answer his question.
You're going to find out somebody lying, and it ain't Yahweh. Somebody lying here. Somebody lying. Somebody's lying. Somebody. Simple question, y'all. Just look, this is just a simple question. And look, leave religion, leave your belief system, leave all of it out. If eating meat is good for us, then why is it killing all of y'all dead?
Now, look what he said. I mean, this is so, you know how we study in the school here and we say, man, after a while, people are going to get tired of traditional religious ideology, traditional Western, and I'm not making reference to the pure or the true definition of religion as far as a way of life. I'm using religion in the context of superstition and idealism and people's dogmas. So he have reached the top of the dogmas, because this is what happens when we address the real world. The religious dogma does not answer questions. And that's why he's saying, put your religion to the side. Put your beliefs to the side. Why do we have to say that? It's because in the religious world, whether you're Israelite or whether you're Western Christian, you're not scientific. And what I mean scientific, I'm talking about, you don't really deal with knowledges. I mean, real knowledges. You may quote and repeat the law by the letter, but the knowledges of the law, the knowledges, the founded principles, the essentials, the fundamentals, and even the principles and what it branches off to and other knowledges or sciences of the world, you don't have a conversation for that. I heard, for example, one so-called Israelite rebuttal this guy who we're listening to when he was talking about making reference to this book, Gospel of the Holy 12. And so he was arguing in this book, or arguing against the book, that Yahushua had went to Egypt, he went to Samaria, he went to India. And so his argument was, well, why would he have, this is Yeshua, this is Yehoshua, Yahawashai. You know, God gave him knowledge. That's true. Now, I'm not saying this in defense of that book, of Oseli, of Gideon. I'm saying it in the sense of practical knowledge. God definitely gives knowledges. We need to know how, though. So his reply was, God, Yahweh gives knowledge. Like Solomon, when he received the knowledges from Yahweh, he filled the temple when Solomon prayed and gave him the knowledge. Do you think that Solomon was endowed with all that knowledge at the snap of a finger, like it came down out of the sky and all of a sudden that same day, Solomon had all that knowledge? Or will the Creator guide Solomon and teach him in his life experiences and give him the education needed as he deal in this world as a political leader, as a teacher, as a planter, as dealing with the prophets and studying? That don't happen over. That's not a snap of the fingers, but the idealist religious mind think a magic spell came over Solomon. He had all his knowledge. But the scripture says itself that Yehoshua grew in knowledge and in favor with God and man. So he's saying, leave the religious stuff out of it. In other words, he's saying, leave your idealism at the door. And what he wants to know is, why is this happening? Why? And he said a simple question, because somebody lying. And I'm here to tell him, the Bible not lying. So because he have been inside of religious idealism so long himself, and he have not found any answers there from the school of thought he been taught by, when he enter into the real world, as he deal with his herbs and stuff like that and talk to real people and deal with real problems scientifically, now he realized his own religious idealism, he's in a conflict because he can't make it connect with the real world. It's not that the Bible don't connect, but it's the way he's been taught. And this is, in essence, what I understand he's challenging. Okay? Now, because of the way he's been taught, it have caused him to go to another extreme. But nevertheless, the so-called prophets or messengers or watchmen, whatever they call themselves, they're not answering this question. Now let's get this again. Let's hear him again.
And that was somebody lying, and it ain't y'all. You gonna find out somebody lying, and it ain't Yahweh. Somebody lying here. Somebody lying. Huh? Somebody's lying. Somebody. Simple question, y'all. Just look, this is just a simple question. And look, leave religion, leave your belief system, leave all of it out. If eating meat is good for us, then why is it killing all of y'all dead?
That's his question. Why? Why? Now, we're going to address this. Let us play a little more.
Simple question. Without saying Yahweh said it was good, because no, he didn't. Somebody else had to. Yahweh couldn't have said that it was good. It's good to do its purpose here on the earth, but not to be meat unto you. If all these different theologians, if all these different pastors, you're going to find out somebody lying. And it.
See, look who he's calling to account: theologians and pastors, all of the people in the religious idealist world. So I'm repeating this because those of you who may hear us come on and we say we approach the Bible from a social political perspective, this is one of the reasons why. Because if you don't do it that way, you're going to get frustrated. Some people are going to get frustrated. They're going to get confused. And so what he's explaining, somebody lying. See, but at the end of the day, the dietary observance for flesh is in the book of Leviticus, and it is a very careful analysis and guidelines for the consumption of flesh and for what makes it unclean. So we're going to talk about some of these things briefly. But in essence, what we really want to do, we want to spend our time to explain and to show scientifically, when I mean using the evidence around us, empirical evidence, to answer this man's question. And everyone else who may believe the Bible, and again, I don't have any dogs in the fight. I'm not, meaning I'm not defending flesh. Okay, I'm not defending it, meaning I don't consume it. No animal products. But I'm not here personally. I'm here to deal with the text. That's why I'm addressing this, to deal with the text. And the Bible is right on. The Bible is right. It's the teachers that has caused the problem. So he's saying someone is lying. All your theologians and everybody else, something wrong here.
Yahweh, somebody lying here. Somebody lying. Huh? Somebody's lying. Somebody. Simple question, y'all. Just look, this is just a simple question. And look, leave religion, leave your belief system, leave all of it out. If eating meat is good for us, then why is it killing all of y'all dead?
Now, I'm not replaying this over and over again. This is actually a video that I copied and posted here of a rebuttal. And it's apparent that whoever filmed this video is just keep repeating and keep playing over and over again what he's saying, possibly for the fact that he's saying leave religion out of it. So pretty much just trying to show that he's abandoning Yahweh or Yahweh and all this stuff. That's their approach here. And that's not the approach we're taking. So I'm not replaying it like this. It's just the video itself is going to spend the majority of the time repeating what he's saying. I want to see if we're going to allow him to say something else before he repeats it again, before we go into our subject. But in the meantime, do you plan on reading the text at all today, my brother?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
Okay, so if that's what you want to do today, go to Ezekiel, the 4th chapter, so we can lay the foundations of what we're going to examine today. Ezekiel chapter 4. So let me play this while you're going to get that.
Simple question. Without saying Yahweh said it was good, because no, he didn't. Somebody else had to. Yahweh couldn't have said that it was good. It's good to do its purpose here on the earth. Yahweh and his only begotten eternal one, the order of Melchizedek, the king of righteousness. But something is wrong when I am reading in this book and it's promoting meat and it's promoting all these things, but then I'm seeing a direct sick effect come from it. And we're the children of Israel. We're the children of Yahweh. He never have forsaken us, never will. And the end goal is to get us to the kingdom, to be a part of the 144. And we're going back. Something ain't lining up. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. All I'm saying, it can't nobody answer that. Nobody. I have yet. No scholar can answer that. No scholar, no biochemist. And y'all don't want to smoke. I'm willing to sit down and talk this out with anybody. I'm willing to sit down and talk this out with anybody. And look, we're gonna have to use common sense here. And I'm not coming from a religious standpoint or none of that. You ain't gonna get me with the okie doke collusions or none of that, because we are in the laboratories. We're seeing the findings. We're seeing the database. We're seeing the results. And we're seeing what this meat is doing to the people. And it's not only the meat, it's the alcohol too. It's the alcohol too. It's the alcohol too. Whether it's fermented or not, whether it's fermented, whether it's wine, it's everything. I'm seeing what this stuff is doing to the people. How's we calling that? How can we call that good? How can we call that good? How? I don't see it. I don't see it. I do not see it. I do not see it. And it's not me, this is not me forsaking my faith. I know who I am. I am Hebrew Israelite by the core. Before that, I am a Sumerian. This is not me forsaking Yahweh. I believe in Yahweh. I believe in the universal creator. This is not me forsaking it.
Now, I'm not doing that. Again, they're pausing him because I guess they want to go back and show where he said he's a Sumerian. They want to go back and, go back and show where he said that leave religion out of it, and all of the different nuances he's saying. That's what they're addressing. They're nitpicking him like that. Okay, look, he said he's a Sumerian and this and that. Look, answer his question. Now he said several times it's not adding up. So to me, whether he agree with what we're saying or not, one thing I can acknowledge is that I believe he's really perplexed. He's really trying to find an answer. And I also believe that the so-called Hebrew, AKA pseudo nation, really the religious world, the Greek religious ideology, the German ideologist world, they don't have an answer. That's why he said he's waiting. No one gave him an answer yet. Well, now what we want to do, and this is not concerning, because he said a few things I don't necessarily agree with. I can talk about the references he's making out of the gospel of the Holy 12, but that's not necessary. We dealt with that. Right now, I just want to deal with his question. And his question, again, is if meat is good for you and wine and alcohol, because he's going to go on and say it in this video, that's all these Hebrews do. Everything is a festivity, drinking and eating flesh. And, he talks about how many of them are sick and this and that. Address the facts. Is this the case? You must acknowledge what he's saying to a certain degree, because many of these same Hebrew Israelites will read Deuteronomy 28 and talk about how plagued we are. But through religious idealism, we make it seem like the creator is sitting in a chair like a man somewhere waving a wand. That's Hollywood for you. And that's, again, why we're saying, we argue that if all of you who's coming to learn the Bible, we're saying that you must learn it from a different perspective. Learn it from a real life perspective. And it's going to take time. And this is one of the reasons why we're saying it. Let's go to Ezekiel chapter 4 so we can lay the foundations of something that was very important that was told by the Ezekiel. And the context of Ezekiel is very important. His context is that the colonial rulers of Babylon had come and destroyed the ruling class, the aristocracy in Jerusalem, and they left all of the poor people in the land, but all of the aristocrats and the tradesmen he took back to Babylon to build Babylon. So Ezekiel is actually speaking. He, I believe, went in the second wave of the captives, but he's speaking of the state of condition that Israel will be in under their colonial masters. So if we study colonialism and what comes forth of colonialism and study imperialism, what we see, it will actually start to lay the foundations of what's happening with our flesh, with the foods. But he's saying animal flesh. And I'm gonna give you an example on why study is important. Because when I listen to the videos, they make it seem like the only time a person will kill, the only reason why people kill animals was for eating them. Historically speaking, that's simply not true. You killed animals for leather. You use the leather for clothing. Like the Indians didn't waste any part of the buffalo. The people who used the animals did not go and kill up all of the buffalo, but they used the animals for food. They used the animals' fat for ointments, like lanolin from the sheep. They used the leather. It could be for clothing. It could be for housing. So when we're looking at the use of killing an animal, it's not just to eat them, number one. That's important to know. But two, primarily what I want to show, once we begin to see and understand the foundations of colonialism, the foundations of imperialism, which the Bible speaks of all over the place, then we could start to put the clues together. And this is what we mean by historical and dialectical materialism. We look at a problem, and that problem just didn't arise all of a sudden. Like the proverb says, a curse causeless do not come. So we have to look at the world, the material world, to find out what happened in this material world. And we also have to look at the invisible world, which entails the consciousness, which entails men's attitudes, men's ideologies, and how they are conducting themselves in the material world. This is how we assess things as theoreticians. Then we can find out and identify the problems. See, that's why when the prophets talk about the judgment of the body of Hamashiach, it said he shall not judge after the hearing of the ears or what he see. He must assess and ascertain the facts. They're arguing he's really a theoretician. You just can't go off of what it appears to be. You have to do the research. You have to see what's happening really. Now, in Ezekiel chapter 4, starting, if you will, at verse 9, let's find out what Ezekiel will begin to bring to the table concerning Israel in the context of colonial masters. And this is where we are today. Not just Israel, but other nationalities. We are under our colonial masters. And so we must build upon this fact to answer his question. And we're going to use the Bible to do it. And we're going to look at the Bible scientifically. Now watch what I mean. In other words, dealing with it according to knowledge, because that's what science means. We're destroyed for a lack of knowledge. We're not approaching it scientifically. So therefore, this guy has been studying the Israelite community for almost 10 years. He's running to a brick wall because the foundation that had been laid by the Israelite communities is not answering real life questions. So when you get Ezekiel chapter 4, start reading at verse 9 for me, please.
Yes, sir. And it reads, take thou also unto thee wheat and barley and beans and lentils and millet and fitches, and put them in one vessel, and make thee bread thereof, according to the number of the days that thou shalt lie upon thy side, 390 days shalt thou eat thereof. Verses 10. And thy meat which thou shalt eat shall be by weight, 20 shekels a day. From time to time shalt thou eat it. Thou shalt drink also water by measure, the sixth part of an hin. From time to time shalt thou drink. And thou shalt eat it as barley cakes, and thou shalt bake it with dung that cometh out of man in their sight.
What is dung? Feces? Is that what dung is? Feces?
Yes.
I want you to take this grain, these grains, whole grains, and I want you to mix it with man's feces. Let's continue to read.
Yes, sir. Verses 13. And the Lord said, even thus shall the children of Israel eat their defiled bread among the Gentiles, whither I will drive them.
The children of Israel shall eat adulterated food among the nations where I shall drive them. This is laying a foundation for our argument. The children of Israel shall eat adulterated food among the nations. How adulterated shall it be? The adulteration of the food shall be the equivalent of man's dung. And he's going to tell Ezekiel to substitute man's dung for cow's dung, but you're going to eat dung. Either way, you're going to eat dung, feces. Finish reading that.
Yes, sir. Verses 14. Then said I, Lord God, behold, my soul hath not been polluted for from my youth up, even till now, have I not eaten of that which dieth of itself, or is torn in pieces, neither came there abominable flesh into my mouth. Then he said unto me, lo, I have given thee cow's dung for man's dung, and thou shalt prepare thy bread therewith. Verses 16.
Dung. That's good. Regardless, he's going to eat dung. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
He won't be able to get out of that besides eating dung. So, if you lay in the foundations that Israel, you should be carried off among the nations. Why? How? What do you mean carried off? Well, to name it, you're going to be invaded by imperialists. This is what you call invaders who take a person from their country, colonize their country, rob their country of resources, and oppress the people. These are imperialist colonial invaders. All right. And they have one mode of action. It's cyclical. They do the same thing over and over and over again. So when we study social science, when we approach the Bible from a social political perspective, it brings more light to what Ezekiel is explaining. Colonialism, you shall fall to. And since you will be colonized, your colonizers will cause you to eat defiled bread. Why? This is the question. But one thing we're bringing to the table, is it the bread? Is it the grains? Is it the lentils? All of the whole grains, the barley, and everything that he told Ezekiel to bring together. Is that a problem? Is the barley and the beans and the millet and the fishes? Is that an issue? Can we say that the barley, the beans, the millet will kill? Or will we argue that it is the adulteration that will be in the midst of the barley and the millet and the beans? This is what we must pay attention to, which is ignored even by Euro-Gentile science. Now, let me give an example of what I mean. I'm going to go into Capital, Volume 1 of Karl Marx to show you that this isn't a phenomenon just among the so-called African Americans. And once you look and see why, we must learn why we have concentrated food lot operations here. Why? Why are you packing all of the fowls in contraptments like this? Why are you packing all of the lambs and the turkeys and the cows and the bulls? I have pigs up here, but we know we don't eat pig, but we just giving an example. Now, he said you shall eat the foul bread. Let's go to the book of Exodus. I said Exodus. I want Leviticus chapter 11. The book of Leviticus chapter 11.
Yes, sir.
Now, when he's saying defiled bread, you know, the next question should be, how? How will it be defiled? Remember, he's seen the defilement even among clean and wholesome grains. There's a reason. Scientifically, it's not that flesh is bad. It's not that something wrong with the Bible. It's more to it than this. Now, Leviticus 11 is real meticulous. And the priest was given this guidelines for the eating of insects, for the eating of beast, fish, and fowl. And they had to abide by it very, very carefully. Okay. So here in Leviticus, right, I want to go down to something. Let's say, let's go down to, let's just start reading right away in chapter 11, starting at verse 1.
Yes, sir. And it reads, and the Lord spake unto Moses and to Aaron, saying unto them, speak unto the children of Israel, saying, these are the beasts which ye shall eat among all the beasts that are on the earth. Whatsoever parteth the hoof, and is cloven footed, and cheweth the cud among the beasts, that shall ye eat. Nevertheless, these shall ye not eat of them that chew the cud, or of them that divide the hoof, as the camel, because he cheweth the cud, but divideth not the hoof.
That's good. He's unclean. Let's skip down. Let's skip down a bit. Let's skip down to verse 26.
Yes, sir. This is the book of Leviticus, chapter 11, verses 26. The carcasses of every beast which divideth the hoof, and is not cloven footed, nor cheweth the cud, are unclean unto you. Every one that toucheth them shall be unclean. And whatsoever goeth upon his paws, among all manner of beasts that go on all four, those are unclean unto you.
Now let's think about something real quick. So now it must divide the hoof, be chew the cud, and be cloven footed for consumption. If it doesn't do all three, it cannot be consumed like the pig and the camel. Now he's going into anything that have paws is just out of the question altogether. So we're looking at dogs, cats, possums, skunks, mouse, rat. All of that, that's out of the question. There is nothing out of that beastly family you can consume. Let's continue to read this.
I'll finish that 27. Whosoever toucheth their carcass shall be unclean until the evening. Verse 28. And he that beareth the carcass of them shall wash his clothes, and be unclean until the evening. They are unclean unto you. These also shall be unclean unto you among the creeping things that creep upon the earth, the weasel, and the mouse, and the tortoise after his kind, and the ferret, and the chameleon, and the lizard, and the snail, and the mole.
All right. Think about what he's saying. All of these creeping things, they are all unclean. Continue.
Yes, sir. These are unclean unto you among all that creep. Whosoever doth touch them, when they be dead, shall be unclean unto the even. And upon whatsoever any of them, when they are dead, doth fall, it shall be unclean. Whether
now,
it be.
When he's saying unclean, I'm going to cut you off for a moment. When he's saying uncleanness, we're not talking spookism. We're talking bacteria. We're talking viruses. We're talking unseen probably even through, you only could see some through a microscope, of living bacterias and viruses that cause disease. Some of these bacterias and viruses are contained only within a certain beast. And if you eat these beasts, or the blood or the dead carcasses will release these, for lack of better words, pathogen causing bacteria or viruses, and it can infect you. Now watch, and I'm going somewhere with it as we incorporate what we're learning here about the meats. Now remember, Ezekiel said you're going to eat things that is defiled. And hopefully at the end of the day, we can find out who the real corporate of the death is. It's not the Bible not wrong. The God of heaven knew exactly what he was talking about. The Torah and the Bible isn't corrupted. But it's interesting how we will accuse the Torah, we will accuse the scriptures, but we will not accuse the capitalists. Why? We very even seldom even say that word, because they haven't taught us to. But when you hear at this school, you must know it. The system itself and all those who work behind the system, they must be exposed. And the only way you're going to expose them is to understand them and to study them. And you do not study them in religious ideology. You do not study them in religious idealism. But when you're studying the world according to the Holy Scriptures, you have no choice but to study the capitalists. Just like Samuel and Isaiah had no choice but to understand the feudal lords of their day. So what we're reading here is the defilement and adulteration that can come forth from beast that doesn't divide the hoof, chew the cud, and the cloven footed, or in other words, if they're unclean, and anything with paws like dogs, possum, rats, cats, creeping things. Notice how the defilement is being described, or the uncleanness. And we want to take this principle and apply it to the other aspects in which we're going to bring to the table today. Now, if you will, start from verse 31 again.
Yes, sir. This is the book of Leviticus, chapter 11, verses 31. These are unclean to you among all that creep. Whosoever doth touch them, when they be dead, shall be unclean until the even. And upon whatsoever any of them, when they are dead, doth fall, it shall be unclean. Whether it be any vessel of wood, or raiment, or skin, or sack, whatsoever vessel it be, wherein any work is done, it must be put into water, and it shall be unclean unto the even. So it shall be cleansed.
So you shall be cleansed, excuse me. Now, scientists realize, and I remember reading science books, they wanted to know, how did Moses have the knowledge of bacteria and disease-causing agents? How did he know that the fluid of H2O or water will kill and remove? They wanted to know that because they began to understand the science in which Moses is bringing to the table. So what he's saying is, you have these different vessels, whether it's wood, whether it's on skin, it must go through water. Just like they tell you to wash your hands today, it must go through water because it can contaminate, or the Bible is calling it unclean. Now, the children of Israel, in the context of colonial masters, you shall eat the foul bread. Now, most of us don't consider how the lamb or the fish come to the dinner table. Most of us don't consider that. But the biblical record is causing us to consider it. Look how meticulous it is. It's explaining it in detail. Now, what if we go against it? Accursed, causeless, do not come. Now, watch what he said. Any skin, any sack, anything where work is to be done, if a lizard, a ferret, anything, chameleon, a mole, anything, turtle, mouse, anything die on it, even when it comes down to certain insects, you got to wash it. Now watch this. Let's continue to read this. Verse
Verse
33.
33. And every earthen vessel whereinto any of them falleth, whatsoever is in it shall be unclean, and ye shall break it.
Why do you have to break an earthen vessel? Anybody, you know why? It's porous. It's going to suck in the pathogens. Wood, metals, and everything else could be washed, but if it was clay, it's porous. You must destroy it. Now, before I move further, I want you to understand where we're going with this scientifically. You walk into the deli, they finish, and you see ground beef, ground turkey, and your mind is clean. And I'm using ground. But have you looked at the FDA requirements and how the FDA allow a certain amount of insects unclean? Allow a certain amount of mouse and rat feces and mouse and rat parts. See, under normal circumstances, you might not have a problem with your calf or your lamb or even your chickens. But under the circumstances of the mode of production of the capitalists, they have brought the animals and the beasts into unnatural environments. And therefore, they themselves are contaminated and causing disease. Many of them die or on their way to death, but because of the profit motive, they're still chopped up and thrown into the market. The capitalists don't have different utensils and different pots and pans for the swine flesh and for the cattle, for the goat. So therefore, what's not taken into question is the breaking of the science of Leviticus 11. And this is just the beginning I'm talking about. I'm going to the very foundations. Look it up. Now, I'm not going to read it all today, but the capitalists also add blood. They add blood for weight. Later on, we're going to get into some more added things that's given to the animals, added carcinogens given to the animals because they're packed in unnatural conditions. So the question really isn't the Bible is corrupted. Why will God say you can eat meat when you all dropping dead? No, we got to scientifically approach it. It's telling you how to deal with the flesh so you won't drop dead. It's telling you how to deal. Leviticus leads into the plagues of leprosy, autoimmune disorders. He's showing the priests are scientists. The priests are doctors. And so therefore, part of their job is to eliminate disease, pandemics, and epidemics. So the argument should be not the beast, but the mode of production of the ruling class and their corporations as they manufacture the meat on the platter. Now, notice what else. Now, so this will begin to understand, we can begin to understand why Daniel, while he was in Babylon, he said, look, give me beans and vegetables. It's not because Daniel believed that the dietary law was wrong. He didn't believe that. But what he's arguing is science. Now, notice, anything that these beasts fall on, insects or these creeping things, it is unclean, right? Earthen vessels, anything you fall on, it shall be unclean, and earthen vessels, you shall break it. Watch in verse 34, watch what he said.
Of all
Verse
meat,
34.
of all meat, which may be eaten.
He's talking about food, of all food, which may be eaten.
That on which such water cometh shall be unclean. And all drink that may be drunk in every such vessel shall be unclean.
Now, look what he said. Of all meat, which may be eaten, that on which such water cometh, shall be unclean. Watch what else he says. Go ahead.
Verses 35. And everything whereupon any part of their carcass falleth shall be unclean, whether it be oven or ranges for pots, they shall be broken down, for they are unclean and shall be unclean unto you. Nevertheless, a fountain or pit wherein there is plenty of water shall be clean.
All right.
But
Now,
that,
go ahead.
but that which toucheth their carcass shall be unclean.
Now look what he's arguing. So if you got a pile of beans, dead pig drop on your pile of beans, dead mouse on your pile of beans, will your beans be unclean? Only if they wet. Long as they dry, they won't be unclean. So therefore, in the capitalist mode of production, in the survival mode, it is safe to eat. Like Daniel said, give me the beans and vegetables. Long as no water had come upon them, there's no reason for water to come upon them as long as you're not eating them. So normally these are what they call dry goods in which you store. And any beast that fall on them or animal or anything that break through or may even eat them and die, it will not contaminate your food supply, long as it's dry. Now, if you have these pigs, these chickens and their feed, and we're going to look at what they're feeding them. You got an influx of rats, you have an influx of mice, and you in a farm. So you have a lot of wildlife scavenging for food, probably being killed, because chickens kill rats. We raise chickens. They kill them things. They kill snakes. They kill a lot of things in the grass, a lot of things that's not edible. But what happens is that your chickens die. They mixed in with it. It's mixed in with their feed. It's mixed in a whole environment. And before you know it, your chickens begin to pass disease. They begin to die on their own. So to stop them from passing disease, they give the chickens antibiotics. But what else does the antibiotics do? It fattens them up. Therefore, they can go for a higher price. This is some of the stuff we're going to read to you. So we say the indictment shouldn't be against the Bible. Because like he said, truly, Yahweh not lying. Yahweh isn't lying. But the Bible not lying either. So Ezekiel showed us, you shall eat the foul bread, adulterate. Now let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. Capital, volume 1. Now watch this. Karl Marx Capital, volume 1. Capital, I'm just going to give you an example to show you this just didn't happen here. This has been going on for a long time. And I'm going to go back to show you how this has happened and what's going on here. Now, this is not even flesh, but this is going to prove our point. This is the transformation of money into capital or mammon. Now, watch the science behind this of adulterated foods. Footnote 14. It says, in London, there are two sorts of bakers. The full price who sell bread at its full value, and the undersellers who sell it at less than its value. The latter class comprises more than 3/4 of the total number of bakers. So you have more undersellers, cheap sellers of bread. Watch this. The undersellers, almost without exception, sell bread adulterated with alum, that is like salt aluminums or aluminum salts. They adulterate their bread with alum, soap, pearl ash, and chalk. Derbyshire stone dust and other similar agreeable nourishing and wholesome ingredients. They're being sarcastic. Stone dust. Further reading in this book, they also, the chimney sweeps. From the chimneys, they used to put it in the flour for the bread. It says in Dr. Hassel's Adulterations, Detected, second edition in London, 1861, Sir John Gordon stated before the committee of 1855 that in consequence of these adulterations, the poor man who lives on 2 pounds of bread a day does not now get 1/4 part of nourishing matter, let alone the deleterious effects on his health. He wouldn't even eat meat, but he's still sick. Why? Was it the bread? Or is it the chalk and the stone dust? What did he show Ezekiel? Was it the millet? Is it the wheat? Or is it the adulterations in it? That needs to be addressed, because when you start to address the adulterations in the flesh, then you're going to walk one road, and that road going to lead you right back to the capitalist mode of production. All of, in that one road, that capitalist mode of production that people are so tirelessly trying to ignore. And you think you could close your eyes and tap your heels together 3 times, and a man gonna come out of the sky and save you, or the spaceship's gonna come. You think you're gonna close your eyes, right? And say there's no place like home, huh? And one day, somebody gonna come out of the sky and take you somewhere. Okay, this guy had enough of that. And what he needed to know is answers.
Eating meat.
Listen again.
If eating meat is eating, you're gonna find out somebody lying, and it ain't Yahweh. Somebody lying here. Somebody lying. Huh? Somebody's lying. Somebody. Simple question, y'all. Just look, this is just a simple question. And look, leave religion, leave your belief system, leave all of it out. If eating meat is good for us, then why is it killing all of y'all dead? Simple question. Without saying Yahweh said it was good, because no, he didn't. Somebody else had to. Yahweh couldn't have said that it was good. It's good to do its purpose here on the earth, but not to be meat unto you. If all these different theologians, if all these different pastors, you're going to find out somebody lying.
Somebody lying. Let's go to Proverbs, the 23rd chapter. Let's look at more science.
Yes, sir.
So we're looking at how the Creator was explaining that your food can become contaminated if it's been doused with water. But these dead carcasses, it can cause a problem. But not only will these dead carcasses cause a problem, because you could be eating meat, you are. In fact, when we were searching for land, we ran into a man who supplied cows to McDonald's. And I'm sure a lot of people who are on the farms and know people who deal with livestock, they know. The capitalist is not going to lose profits. And you don't have enough inspectors combing the farms to make sure that every animal that they give to you is alive or not half dead. But nevertheless, when it goes to its production process and you have nothing but dead flesh laying around or being chopped up into vats, it's going to attract rats. It's going to attract rodents, skunks, possums, raccoons, wildlife. And some of these wildlife going to die because of the contamination that's already in these food, concentrated animal food lot operations. And when they die and your food is being manufactured and you got dead rats mixed up with your legs of lamb or your chicken breast or your chicken drumsticks, they're just gonna wipe the rat off. They're just gonna get them off. They're gonna remove the rat feces, clean it up, and then they're gonna package it. But all in the meanwhile, it's unclean. And why is it that it's likely for that to happen? It's not because there's something inherently wrong with the chicken or the goats. No, it is the mode of production. Later on, we're going to talk about the consumption rate and how it is the capitalist mode of production that may meet the center of the plate, which is a new phenomenon in history among the masses. But the rich, they used to just eat, and they were plagued by these things, because now we also look at the amount of consumption, but we're not getting that part yet. What we want to do is scientifically break down on what is wrong. And our question is, why is this being ignored then? Why are we jumping right to the animals? And since we're jumping right to the animals and we're not looking at everything in between, all of a sudden now we start to blaspheme and say the Bible corrupted. No, I think we need to go back, retrack, and walk the road down and see what we find. Proverbs 23:1. What do you have there?
Yes, sir. And it reads, when thou sittest to eat with a ruler, consider diligently what is before thee, and put a knife to thy throat, if thou be a man given to appetite.
That's right. Consider what's diligently before you. We're going to get into that a little bit later. And because you just can't talk about meats. Another thing that have come out of the capitalist mode of production, or imperial colonialism in particular, is sugar. Sugars. That's devastating. That destroys. And this is none other than a byproduct or a delicacy out of exploitation. Again, exploitation of people, exploitation sugarcane, exploiting the sugarcane in the land, and they're producing sugars, which is also deleterious to the health. All these added sugars. So what we have to look at is the true causes. Now we have to reevaluate, are they dropping dead because of the cow? Or are they dropping dead because of the genetically modified corn that the cow is being fed? Are they dropping dead because of the uncleanness, because the cow flesh have now been contaminated by rats? Dead carcasses, chopped up. One of the elders and teachers in the school, he gave a report. He said he did some research. Ground turkey has 60% of feces in it. It didn't say whose feces, though. It didn't say whether it was the turkeys. It didn't say that I know of. It could have been rat feces. It could have been different forms, different feces, but it was feces. What did Ezekiel say? The defiled bread in which the children of Israel shall eat among the heathen where they are scattered. Do you understand when we begin to look at this politically? Israel, you're going into captivity because you were supposed to set up a government that will renovate the world of oppressors. If you don't set this up, nobody gonna set it up. And if you don't set it up, then oppressors and colonial rulers will rule this world and devastate it and crush it and terrorize it. And you yourself will become a victim to the terror and the plunder of the colonial rulers. So your repentance entails breaking the oppressor. Then not only will you set yourself free, you set the planet free. If you don't do that, then the colonial oppressors will go forth and plunder and rob and exploit. And the food in which they even serve you will be a byproduct of their greed and lasciviousness and the hunger and drive for profits. So therefore, if you're among the ruler, you sitting at his table, here we are among the rich men, and we sit at their table, we got to consider diligently what is set before us. Why? One thing is because the prophetic language has told us that defiled bread shall be set before us. And that bread shall be so defiled, it will be the equivalent of eating feces. Literally, though. Through the capitalist mode of production, the people consume literal feces. Now, let's go a little further with this. He said defiled bread. That's what the people shall eat. I would like to go into a book or a magazine 2009, August 31st. The real cost of cheap food. The real cost of cheap food. Now, this is going to lead into another discussion, God will. How did the food get so cheap? Why is meat so cheap? Why can you get cheap meats? You can buy, I mean, when it comes down to natural organic vegetables, it's sometimes more expensive than meat. You can get 3 cheeseburgers from McDonald's at the price of 1 head of kale, organic. What's happening here? We're going to investigate meatification, God willing, in the coming days. We're going to pick this up because I don't want to exhaust this. But I wanted to lay the foundation first. We got to answer this question scientifically. What's happening here? Page 31, America's food crisis and how to fix it. Even though he's going to talk about pigs, but yet the same condition is happening to the cows and to the chickens. Any comments before I move forward? Anything you want to say?
No, sir.
Okay. It says somewhere in Iowa, a pig is being raised in a confined pen, packed in so tightly with other swine that their curly tails have been chopped off so they don't bite one another. To prevent him from getting sick in such close quarters, he is doused with antibiotics. The waste products by the pig and his thousands of pen mates on the factory farm where they live goes into manure lagoons and blanket neighboring communities with air pollution and a stomach churning stench. Now, this is the same mode of production for cattle. They're so close together they could barely move. To prevent them from getting sick, they're being doused with antibiotics. And their waste is polluting neighboring communities. This is what we see here on the screen. We have ponds of waste. We have these vats or these large barns, concentrated animal food lot operations. These are contain nothing but animals. So these animals you see, they are inside of these vats. They're inside of these elongated barns. Let's continue. He's fed on American corn that was grown with the help of government subsidies and millions of tons of chemical fertilizer. I'll read it again. Not only is he fed, the cows are fed the same thing. The commercial conventional cows. The commercial conventional sheeps. He's fed on American corn that was grown with the help of government subsidies and millions of tons of chemical fertilizer. When the pig is slaughtered at about 5 months of age, he'll become sausage or bacon that will sell cheap, feeding an American addiction to meat that has contributed to an obesity epidemic, currently afflicting more than 2/3 of the population. And when the rains come, the excess fertilizer that coaxed so much corn from the ground will be washed into the Mississippi River, down into the Gulf of Mexico, where it will help kill fish for miles and miles around. That's the state of your bacon, 2009. Now we included the fish. Is it the fish the problem, or is it the contamination into the waters? So when we just focus on the meats, he's leading us from one form of religious idealism into another form of Eastern idealism, of the vegetarianism. It's still idealism. You're not addressing the real problems. You're just addressing the symptoms, not the real problem. So it's the same thing going on for the cattle, right? Absolutely. We're going to read a couple more before. Let me check something real quick. All right. We're going to go just a few more minutes, and God willing, we're going to discuss this again. And I told you, God willing, for the sake of those who asking, we were just trying to figure out when we will want to release the teaching on Isaiah 11 to show you to show you a perspective, what we understand to be the context of the lion eating straw and the snake eating dust. Okay, so we're going to look at a couple more, but we want to revisit this because I believe it's a good question. And I believe this question he's asking is calling all religions into question. And that's what he said. Leave your religions at the door. He's calling all idealism into question.
Yahweh. Somebody lying here. Somebody lying. Huh? Somebody's lying. Somebody. Simple question, y'all. Just look, this is just a simple question. And look, leave religion, leave your belief system, leave all of it out. If eating meat is good for us, then why is it killing all of y'all dead? Simple question. Even the scripture tell you a fool believe everything he readeth. See that? Everybody want to chase a book around. Everybody want to chase the word. So I'm flabbergasted. I'm stuck.
Hold on. I'm sorry.
stuck, y'all.
I'm doing this now. I want to get to this point.
What thousands of people by way.
I'm sorry. I want you to also hear this part, another part of his argument about, because he's saying relieve religion and your belief system at the door.
Said we can eat meat and alcohol, but it stuck.
Hopefully this will be it. I'm sorry. Hopefully I went back far enough.
Where did?
Okay.
First thing that they're gonna say, well, the Bible said we can eat meat and alcohol, but it didn't sit right with my spirit. I'm like, man, this is not sitting right with my spirit. How can I constantly keep teaching this, but I'm out healing thousands and thousands of people by way of the Messiah, by the way. I'm not doing this on my own. Yahweh is with me, but I'm healing thousands, and my wives, of course, and I'm healing thousands and thousands of people. And the only way I can heal them if I get them off the meat that the Bible said was good to eat. So I'm flabbergasted. I'm stuck.
You see,
I'm stuck, y'all. I'm just like.
You see why he's stuck? Because he's just reading the Bible. He's been taught to read it as a storybook. So the meat in the context today isn't the same context as Leviticus. Meaning the alterations that have taken place. But Leviticus gives a scientific outline. And the Proverbs give us the advice, consider diligently what is set before us. So the indictment isn't against the meat. It's against the social environment, the social context in which it's placed. Just like the indictment isn't against the fish. Fish naturally will not just go suck on mercury. But because of the way that the Bible been taught, that's right. He said he's flabbergasted. He can't answer it. And a lot of the religious guys who call themselves Israelites, priests this, priest that, watchman this, commander that, chief, high priest, prophet, whatever the hell you want to call yourself. At the end of the day, you can't answer it. And this should cause a lot of people to begin to think, why? Why is it that a man who's been studying in the text, according to his own record, for the 10 years, and he can't answer these questions? It's the same reason why someone could sit in a Western so-called Christian assembly for 30 years and don't know what the Bible's saying. See, we just took the next step. We could read a little bit more, many more passages, but are we studying them scientifically? Are we studying the social environment? Then we can understand what's happening. Ezekiel set the social environment. In captivity among the Gentiles where I send you, the Gentile captivity spells out one thing: colonial, imperial rule. And this is where feudalism have come from, and this is where capitalism have come from. It is the drive of exploitation for profit. And once we understand this is the drive for profit, then we could begin to place our food structures in that material environment profit. So I'm gonna sell you a dead animal. I'm gonna fatten it up with blood because it's gonna weigh more. I'm gonna pump it with antibiotics because it's gonna make it fat. I can't wait for a chicken to grow naturally. I got to give it antibiotics where it's so fat and so heavy that it can't even stand up and walk. This is science. This is Bible study. This is the context of the flesh in which the people are consuming and dropping dead. This is the context. And therefore, we find that the fundamentals of Leviticus 11 is they're being broken. How you know your salmon and your perch, what we call clean fish, haven't been in the same vats on the same platter on the same steel grate for cleaning that the lobster was just on? You don't, do you? You don't know how much blood is dried for the weight. There's so many nuances there that it's a pity that's not being acknowledged. I'll play a little bit more. I'm gonna read a little bit more out of this Time Life.
How, I'm like, what is going on here? What is going on? And Yahweh hollered at me. He said, look, go sit in nature. Go sit in nature. Listen to my voice. Listen to my voice. My sheep hear my voice, right? Huh? My sheep hear my voice. I don't have to write this down for you to get it. Go look at what I created.
That's right, and we are. And when we look at what he's created, that's the lab. The Bible is the textbook. And once you put those two together, it opens up wonders, period. And the only way you would know it is when you experience it. It opens up wonders. You can't have one without the other if you want to understand this. So look what he says back in this text here. We read about the pigs, antibiotics, food lot operations. What do you say here? The U.S. agricultural industry can now produce unlimited quantities of meat and grains at remarkably cheap prices. See, the cow will have a calf a year, but under the capitalist mode of production and artificial insemination, the cow will now have 2 to 3 calves a year. The pig will have 1 litter a year, but out of artificial insemination, the pig will now have up to 2 to 3 litters a year. The chickens growing fatter, faster, full of fat, chemicals. The cows are being fed protein pellets to supplement their grain diet, which they're supposed to eat grass. But they're eating corn, grain, soy. That's genetically modified. And for the soy and the grain that's genetically modified that will be given to the cows and given to the cattle for feed, it's also sprayed with chemical fertilizers and pesticides. It doesn't stop there. Once the grain is set before them, let's go back to the protein pellets. The protein pellets are made of dead animals, cats, dogs, roadkill, manufactured into protein pellets for profit. This supplements the feed of the calf. So now the calf not only eating grain and wheat, which he normally doesn't eat, now the cow is eating flesh. This is the science of the capitalist mode of production and its production of flesh. And to ignore it is a crime and to just focus on the meat. Then we get off into heresy, doctrines of devils, forbidding to marry and commanded to abstain from meats or foods which God have given to be received with thanksgiving. Now the people have been giving themselves over to doctrines of devils because the way in which they have studied the Bible has been so limited and mystical and fanciful. Now he's perplexed when he's face to face with the real world. He can't explain it. So the U.S. agricultural industry can now produce unlimited quantities of meat and grains at remarkably cheap prices. But it does so at a high cost to the environment, animals, and humans. Those hidden prices are creeping erosion of our fertile farmland, cages for egg-laying chickens, so packed that the birds can't even raise their wings, and the scary rise of antibiotic-resistant bacteria among farm animals. So they pack so they must give them antibiotics. Most of the antibiotics produced, according to what I have read, most of the antibiotics produced in the United States goes to animals, as well as the corn and the soy. But then it's on our plate. What is the real issue? We must learn what to condemn. Our motto here at the school is, if you see anything wrong and you think something wrong with the Bible, pause, sit down, look in the mirror, because that's what the problem is. It's with you. It's with the one you're looking at in the mirror. You give it a break, you sit down, you learn a little bit more, then you go back to the Bible, and then maybe just so perhaps, if you're humble enough, the Creator will show you what it's saying. Other than that, you're likely to be snared and broken. Perhaps worst of all, our food is increasingly bad for us, even dangerous. Even dangerous. The way we farm now is destructive of the soil, the environment, and us, says Doug Gurian. Doug Gurian Sherman, a senior scientist with the Food and Environment Program at the Union of Concerned Scientists. As the developing world grows richer, hundreds of millions of people will want to shift to the same calorie-heavy, protein-rich diet that have made Americans so unhealthy. Demand for meat and poultry worldwide is set to rise 25% by 2015. But the earth can no longer deliver. Unless Americans radically rethink the way we grow and consume food, they face a future of eroded farmland, hollowed out countryside, scarier germs, higher health costs, and bland tastes. What is he arguing? Is it the meat? Is it the vegetables? Or is it like Ezekiel said, the adulteration inside of the millet, the adulteration inside of the wheat, the adulteration inside of the barley? What is the real culprit? He's asking the question, why are we dropping dead? Because we have forsaken what Yah has put in place. We have allowed the world to ease into the capitalist mode of production, and we have allowed men to a disruptive minority to control the minds of the masses, to cause them to create these conditions that's not only destructive for the animals, that's not only destructive for the earth and the trees and the fish and the water, but it's destructive to us too. It's destructive for us as well. So the condition of the animals is very important. Notice what Proverbs chapter 12 says. Go to Proverbs chapter 12 for me, please.
Yes, sir. And quick comment.
Yes,
I just
sir.
wanted to, just using that logic, we could argue that the water has mercury in it. But will we now say that the water is evil, the water is bad, water is no good? No, we have to look at the capitalist mode of production. So it's not necessarily that the animals are evil, it's how they're being handled, it's how the earth, the atmosphere, the trees, everything is being handled. That's the evil that's being done. It's not that the Father said it. He looked at everything and behold, it was all good. He didn't say any of it was bad. So it was all good. We have to look at how the things are being handled.
Amen. So in other words, there's nothing wrong with the Bible then, is it?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Nothing wrong with the Bible. So to go talk about, you done found some new books from these so-called Catholic, so-called monks who they come up with these, their own little design, following a pattern that Paul warned us about. That's another extreme, brothers and sisters. If you're going to be vegan or vegetarian, be vegan or vegetarian. But at the end of the day, we got to take the next step. We have to go and track down and hunt and cut loose to rid the earth of the forces that's causing this problem, and then everything will be healed. Who's called to do it? The messianic body. Who's the messianic body? All those who believe in Yehoshua ben Dawid. All those who believe in Yehoshua ben Dawid would do the same works he have done. He said, go, I will be with you unto the ends of the earth. As the Father have sent me, so send I you. It's a job to be done. But you got these Negroes waiting around for spaceships. And some of them, they just hiding. Now, again, when I say this, I'm not excluding divine intervention. But I'm saying this not just going to happen, you clicking your heels together 3 times and wishing you was home. Whether your home was in Kansas or whether you think your home somewhere in Jerusalem, it won't happen that way. It's going to happen another way. And when a master, as he observed the divine intelligence, this force that hung in the heavens and earth, the highest species in his creation is man. He wanted to be revealed through man. His glory will be revealed through man. And man don't want to do nothing. So now they want to joke and mock at this guy sipping on a wine, talking about, I'm about to go get me some meat now. I'm telling you, don't take it lightly, what he's saying. His argument may be off, but his sentiment that there's something wrong, I'm warning you, don't mock it. Don't mock it. Because we're not mocking this. We're trying to address this question. I asked you to go to Proverbs. Which one was that?
Chapter 12.
Before you go to Proverbs chapter 12, keep your marker there in Proverbs chapter 12. I want to check something else out real quick. Proverbs chapter 12. Read Proverbs chapter 12, then we're going to go to another one. I'm going to read a couple of excerpts and we're going to close for this evening. Proverbs chapter 12, start reading, if you will, at verse 10.
Yes, sir. And it reads, a righteous man regardeth the life of his beast, but the tender mercies of the wicked are cruel.
You see that? Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Verses 11. He that tilleth his land shall be satisfied with bread, but he that followeth vain persons is void of understanding.
All right. So we want to look at the previous verse. He that is just, isn't that what righteous mean? Just, tendeth to the life of his beast. Why? Because Genesis said we are to dress and keep the earth, not destroy it. We're not supposed to destroy its trees. See, you think it's just chickens under distress when you assaulting them, or pigs under distress when you assaulting them. But trees get under distress too and send out distress signals underground to one another to protect themselves from disease and invaders and beetles, and even when they're being attacked. Trees, they're alive. They communicate with each other when they are in danger. So when we're looking at life, let's look at all life. And then realize that the Creator have put life here, not for man to abuse it, but for it to serve man. The trees to build your homes. If you need wool from the sheep, or if you need butter or milk from him. But now, how do your milk come about? You artificially inseminating the cow. She's having 3 litters, totally wearing her out. Her life expectancy have dropped in half. But you don't have the farm boy no more taking care of his cows, squeezing the udders. You put the udders in the machine. And what comes out of the machine? The machine's not being gentle. It's pulling out that milk. And not only is it pulling out milk, it's pulling out the pesticide. It's pulling out the antibiotics. It's pulling out pus. And it's pulling out blood. And guess where it's going? Into your milk and cheese. In every case, no. But in the conventional case, you well over 90%, I would argue. These are the things we must understand. We can make better informed decisions. And then we could take this Bible a little bit more seriously, because the Bible is teaching us and showing us the way. It's, people read, well, we got to believe in Yah. Yah heals. Yes, he heals. How you think that works? Maybe when he say take heed according to his word, That means we begin to do what he say. It will cause a reaction to heal, right? You say y'all heal, you keep cutting yourself and you pour dirt in the wound. Oh, y'all gonna heal me. No, you gotta clean the wound. And when you clean the wound, you leave the wound alone. You nourish the wound, you clean it, you make it clean. Body do everything else through the power of God. Why? What am I saying? You have to first put yourself in a healing environment. Everything gets back into place. But it's not just for the body, it's for the earth. Now, there's other arguments that I have against that book that they're using to prove that that book is trash. I'm not validating the book. I am strictly addressing his question. I'm going past all of his rhetoric because he got a lot of rhetoric. I'm going past all of that and I'm going right to his question. Why is it killing people, or why are the people dropping dead? Maybe he's asking the wrong question about the Bible saying eat meat. Now I want you to go over to that Proverbs. The righteous tend to the beast. The righteous, the just, the upright will take care of the animals. Right now, we're not taking care of the animals. We see what do he say about the wicked? The tender mercies of the wicked are cruelty. This is what we see. And because of our sin and our wickedness and how we're treating the animals, we're being rebuked. We're being rebuked. It's not that the Bible wrong because he's saying you can eat goat or lamb. Yeah, you can eat it. But right now we must address the problem. We are being rebuked. Proverbs chapter 27, starting at verse 23, if you don't mind. And we're going to get ready to close. I'm going to read a couple more excerpts, and God willing, we're going to pick this up a little later. Proverbs chapter 27. You get the Proverbs chapter 27. Let's start looking at this about verse 23. Verse 23.
Yes, sir. And it reads, be thou diligent to know the state of thy flocks, and look well to thy herds.
You see that? When we follow that principle, then Leviticus is good. You understand what I'm saying? When
Yes,
man, this is the instruction from any man who oversee the beasts and livestock. When we follow these instructions according to righteousness, then you won't get rebuked from the chickens. You won't get rebuked from the beasts or the cows. When we forsake this divine principle and begin to exploit and damage and plunder the livestock and begin to brutalize the earth, then we get rebuked. Read that again.
This is the book of Proverbs, chapter 27 and verses 23. Be thou diligent to know the state of thy flocks, and look well to thy herds. Verse 24. For riches are not forever, and doth the crown endure to every generation? The hay appeareth, and the tender grass sheweth itself, and herbs of the mountains are gathered. The lambs are for thy clothing, and the goats are the price of the field. And thou shalt have goats, milk enough for thy food, for the food of thy household, and for the maintenance for thy maidens.
When? Why? Why will it be good for your household? Why will the food of the goat or the milk of the goat and the butter of the goat or the cheese of the goat, why will it be maintenance? You see, he said maintenance for your household. Why? Read that verse 23 again.
Yes, sir. But, excuse me, be thou diligent to know the state of thy flocks, and look well to thy herds.
There you go. If we take care of the creation, then the milk gonna be good. Then when the festivals come around, you're not trying to eat up every damn cow in the land, but you're gonna celebrate. You will sacrifice one for the family. Use his leather. Use the fat to anoint your skin with lanolin. But you're not trying to kill them all.
Moderation.
Moderation, which God willing, we're gonna get into a little later to show how the capitalist mode of production have persuaded us to consume way too much. It's a psychological thing. Look, we're being trained and programmed on a day-to-day basis. That's why it's important to counter this training. The Bible, I'm trying to tell you, go to the Bible and approach it from a social political perspective. It is a counterattack to this faulty programming of the West and the developed, so-called developed countries. So when we're looking at this maintenance, it's because we are doing righteous. So therefore, we ain't got to worry about no pus and blood. We ain't got to worry about all that. We ain't got to worry about no antibiotics. He's going to bless the flocks. We don't have to worry about disease jumping species bare because we're not killing no pig next to our cows. We're not using the same utensils. Our fresh fish isn't on the same platter as roaches of the sea and shrimp and lobsters. Now, we're looking into the intricacies. Now, we're going to look at this. This is out of the Journal of American Veterinarian Association, July 1st, 1992. Antibiotics and insecticides. In order to combat mastitis and to avoid financial loss, ranchers and feedlot operators inject their cows with massive doses of antibiotics. There are about 80 such antibiotics approved for such use in agriculture. Only 7 are authorized for use in lactating cows. Still could put it in cow's milk. But the USDA tests for only 4 of them. So you can put more in there and they won't even know. For profit. When milk from the grocery store shelves in the northern states were analyzed, it was found that 63% had detectable residues of antibiotics. Are they looking well after their flocks? Are the righteous taking care of the flocks? If you take care of the flocks and look well after your flocks, what did he say in that verse in Proverbs? Verse 27, was that verse 27? What did he say? Read verse 23 and 27 again for me.
Yes, sir. This is the book of Proverbs, chapter 27, verses 23. Be thou diligent to know the state of thy flocks, and look well to thy herds. Verses 27. And thou shalt have goat's milk enough for thy food, for the food of thy household, and for the maintenance for thy maidens.
Why are animals in distress today? Why? Is it the capitalist mode of production? Is it them damn demon capitalists? Is it those principalities and powers that have put this demonic system of powers of darkness in place? Isn't it interesting how capitalism is never brought to the forefront? We'll blame a cow. We'll blame a man. We'll blame an ethnic group. But why we don't blame capital? Because people don't know to blame capital. Because your religious teacher's not teaching it to you. And that's why after 10 years, he have said in an assembly, and he ran into a conundrum. When he is out there trying to help people for God to allow their body to recover, he do not have a biblical explanation. He can't explain why this is happening. That's why he say you got to leave your religions at the door. You got to leave your statement of beliefs at the door. But through the grace of God, we at this school, we don't have to. In fact, we got to bring it in so you can understand our position. Now, whether you agree with our position, that's different. I'm okay with that if you don't. I'm okay with it. At the end of the day, I just have to do a job. I'm convinced of it, but maybe you're not. Those of you who not quite convinced, if you want to learn more, the door is open. You come learn more what we're talking about. Now, look, I'm going to read this excerpt and we're going to close. See if we have any closing comments. And then we're going to open it up on the Zoom. We're going to have any closing comments. So I'm not going to shut that down right away, just in case people have any questions. Now it says here, this is out of Mark Lap's When Antibiotics Fail, 1986. See, I'm going back in the past. The use of BST, bovine growth hormone, and other drugs weaken the animals so that more antibiotics are needed to keep them in production until they are slaughtered. There are extraordinary risks in eating meat and drinking milk. Lancet and antibiotics. Among other problems, it can lead to the development of disease-causing organisms, which are resistant to antibiotics and thus are more deadly. Should you be eating drug-resistant organisms? And this is out of When Antibiotics Fail, 1986, by Mark, M-A-R-C, Lapp, L-A-P-E. Howard Lehman, he says in Mad Cowboy, page 55 and page 56, Howard Lehman says, cattlemen regularly dump the antibiotics and all the feed rather than giving it only to sick cattle. He said, man, they put it all in. They trying to do preventive measures. Take all these antibiotics, fatten up the cattle, get them fat. Take these protein pellets, genetically modified corn and grain that's been pesticides that have been created in the labs of Monsanto and the chemical labs of the pharmaceutical companies. Let us give this to your livestock, and then we're going to set it on your plate a little later. So when he's asking this question, you're right. Yahweh not lying. And I'm going to add another one. The Bible not corrupted.
Lying here. Somebody lying. Huh? Somebody's lying. Somebody. Simple question, y'all. Just look, this is just a simple question. And look, leave religion, leave your belief system, leave all of it out. If eating meat is good for us, then why is it killing all of y'all dead?
I think we start to answer that. God willing, we're going to address it a little bit more. You see, but we got to go into, this is what we call the dialectical method. We have to look into the historical material world. We have to look into the material world and observe and see what have created the conditions and what the conditions have created as well. And then whatever it has created, whatever contradictions is in the midst, the contradiction is food is supposed to be wholesome. But the contradiction in the capitalist society is that it's detrimental. So it's supposed to be wholesome. So what's causing the contradiction that food has become deadly? So we have to look at the historical material environment. And this is what we find it. It's not the meat per se. It's everything that comes with it. God willing, we're going to pick it up and talk about it a little bit more. But before we close, you have anything you want to say before we close? And go into the discussion room?
No more than I appreciate the conversation. I think that it's very edifying, very helpful for young brothers like me and other young brothers and young sisters that are sincerely searching and seeking. Yeah, just humbling ourselves and just reading the Bible, just giving it some time. It is sometimes a lot of us think because we've been reading this. I even used to listen to the brother Yaqui, him and Malachi Maccabee. And sometimes we think just because we've been doing something for a long time that we're perfectionists. That's not necessarily so. You know what I mean? So especially when you're dealing with a complex work like the Bible. So I think that it's important that we study the Bible. We really examine the Bible more than we examine other things. We can look at other things and, synthesize or merge them with the Bible and they fit. I mean, it makes sense, it's congruent, then that's good. But whenever we find ourselves saying that, hey, look, I think something's wrong with the Bible, that's when we need to really ask God for help and forgiveness, because 9 times out of 10 is something wrong with us. But yeah, I just thought it was a great conversation and really appreciate the edification. I'm excited because I know that these conversations can build and grow more and more, on these topics, because we're looking at why the condition is the way it is. Not just, oh, we curse, but what is the curse? Is it imperialism? Is it capitalism? You know what I mean? Being more specific and getting very particular on what the Holy Scriptures is saying to us. But I enjoyed this evening. Shalom to everyone.
Shalom, peace to all you brothers and sisters who sincerely searching. Most High willing, He allow. We're going to come back on, listen to a little bit more as a review. We're going to probably go over just a couple of things we went over tonight, and then we're going to get into another aspect of the capitalist mode of production and the tendencies that it have created inside of its world, inside of this capitalist world. And we're going to look at some studies concerning that so we can answer the question, if eating meat is okay, why the people are dropping dead. So now I believe, hopefully, we begin to explain why it's happening. And we're learning that it's a little bit more complicated than just blaming the meat. Just like it is, you just couldn't blame the bread when we read about Karl Marx excerpt about them putting chalk, concrete dust, cutting it with flour. That was harming people, just eating regular bread, the workman who was eating bread in the 1800s. And Ezekiel showed us, he laid the foundation in Ezekiel when he let us know, when you are colonized and you are led off into under your colonial masters who's going to exploit the world for profits, you will be eating defiled food. But you noticed that the dung was mixed with millet and barley, wholesome things. But it was the adulteration that caused the problem. Now we have to find out how to eliminate the adulteration. We have to find out who's causing the adulteration. Then we must unite in the name of the Messiah and struggle against the powers that's causing the problems, that disruptive minority. For all of you who are sincerely searching, we have our information inside of the description box with the Biblical School of Global Liberation for All Oppressed Peoples, the NMP. I'm Brother Judah, and most high willing, we will come back again with more teachings and discussions. So with that, we're going to sign off, and peace and blessings to all the sincere who's searching.